Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, the Centre submits over 600 names to the Supreme Court in the black money probe. But will it really lead anywhere? As political parties continue to trade charges, the question is, will the big fish ever be caught? Well, that's our special focus tonight. After being ordered to do so, the Centre today gave 627 names of people with foreign bank accounts to the Supreme Court, all in a sealed cover. The court did not reveal the names and has asked the special investigation team that it set up to go through them. Interestingly, the SIT chief, Justice M.B. Shah, has said that the list is the same one that was given to his panel by the government in June. The court now wants a status report on the probe by the end of November and has set a March deadline for the initial probe to be completed. While placing the documents before the bench, the Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi said that the details of the account holders are from the year 2006, which was supplied by the French government to the centre in 2011. He said that the data was stolen from HSBC Bank in Geneva that later reached France, from where the government got the information. He also informed the court that some people have accepted that they have accounts in foreign banks and have also paid tax for the same. But joining us now to explain why all of this could actually turn out to be far more complicated and difficult than what it appears to be right now is my colleague Sudhir Ranjan Sen. Sudhir, you've been speaking to your sources here in the government today, in the Enforcement Directorate and so on. What are you hearing? One gets a sense that it's not going to be so easy to trace this money and the real account holders.
Well, to begin with, Nidhi, what the understanding that we are getting is that, off that list, it seems that about 150 odd people to 120 odd people have voluntarily come ahead and said, yes, we have accounts and here is the tax. Some have even paid the penalty and there is no, there is no liability against them as of now. Mind you, income tax evasion is a civil offence, it's not a criminal offence. Only in certain cases, as in the case of Mr. Burman, has the income tax launched criminal proceedings saying that he willfully and he deliberately hid the fact that he had an account and that there was money in it. So in these cases of criminal charges being put against people are very, very few. In fact, what we understand is it's under 10, and those are the names that the government has revealed to the court, because the protocols that you have signed, the agreements that you have signed very clearly say that nobody else but the income tax department can handle these accounts. Now, what is happening at the income tax, where the investigations are happening, where the SIT is also going to lean on after this to get to the bottom of it. The income tax department can at the most, or is at the most, being able to send out notices and summons. Mind you, it is very difficult on the basis of stolen documents to carry out raids and searches unless and until the information in the list is also corroborated by something on the ground, which then justifies for more action. In the process, very many people have said that, we don't have any accounts. And the income tax department or government of India cannot go back to the banks and say, please verify because it's a stolen document.
I think that's really useful what you've told us, because that explains how complicated and complex this all of this is, and it's very easy to say we'll bring black money back, but it's much more difficult when you look at how it already plays out. Sudhir Ranjan Sen, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Well, the question then is whether we're ever going to know who really has all those hundreds of crores stashed away abroad. The question also is whether our focus is all wrong. Most of the black money that is generated in this country is within India itself. It is not outside India. So are we just looking in the wrong place? Joining us on the program tonight, we have Pinky Anand, the Additional Solicitor General of India, who's also a senior leader of the BJP. Ved Jain, Chairman of the National Council on Direct Taxes with ASSOCHAM. Aarti Jairath is here in the studio with us. Dr. Ajay Kumar of the Congress. And Mahesh Jethmalani joins us tonight from Mumbai. Mr. Jethmalani, let me ask you first. We have this situation today where you now have the SIT chief, Justice Shah, saying on record that the 600 plus names given to the Supreme Court today by the government are the same names that the government gave to us in June, and we're back to square one. I just want to know from you, how have we moved forward today on this story, frankly?
Well, you've certainly not moved forward, but if there was any attempt to stall it by this government, if any attempt, and I'm not saying it's a willful attempt, if there was any attempt, misconceived or otherwise, to set back the investigation, that has been put an abrupt halt to by the Supreme Court. And I don't know, look, Nidhi, there's a German account and there's a French account. The German account has 800, the French account, which comes from the HSBC Bank, Geneva, has 627. Now, I don't know what they gave in the past. All this requires clarity. We need a clear enunciation of which, the government should come out with some documents which evidence what they gave to the SIT in June 2014. Were it both the accounts, the French and the German? Was it only the German? In which case, why do they give only the French today? If they were going to duplicate accounts given in June, why do they only give the French ones and not the German ones today?
No, but
so I'm not quite sure what this is all about, but be that as it may, the matter ends now. We should all be very, very sanguine about the prospects of getting back the money and not negative and pessimistic. There has been a serious obstacle for this investigation. These names have come out since 2009, and those responsible from 2009 for delaying this process are to blame for any delays in the names coming out and the money is being recovered. In fact, a lot of the money may have been siphoned out further and put into other jurisdictions.
One of the main questions, though, that many people asked today was that, look, this was an SIT that the Supreme Court set up, okay? If the SIT already had these 600 plus names, what was the need for the court to then ask the government to submit them separately today? Now, are you saying that that exercise was not futile, because at the end of the day, the court has sent out a message to the government that we are watching and we are closely monitoring this probe, and that in itself is important? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and not just that. The SIT has got these names only in June, and I'm told that some process is already underway. And now, in case there's any public misapprehension, like you seem to be suggesting there is delay by the SIT, which I don't think it can be, because it's monitored by the Supreme Court. I mean, it's utterly absurd to suggest that a government from 2009 has sat on this and done nothing, and an SIT given the names in June 2014 is being absurdly slow. And that SIT now has been told in any case to complete this first status report by November and finish the entire investigation by the 31st of March. So if anybody has any doubt about the SIT, there's a timeline now set by the Supreme Court.
Okay, so let me ask Mr. Jain then. Mr. Jain, would you say, I know you've had concerns that if all names are made public, let's face it, and I want to clarify here that everybody who has bank accounts abroad doesn't necessarily have illegal money stashed in them. Okay, that's the bottom line. And one of the arguments that both the governments took before the court was that naming people would then be an amount of violation of privacy, and it would be unfair. If you're able to prosecute someone, sure, go ahead and name them. So A, are you satisfied today that the court did not reveal the names? The names are with the SIT, nobody really knows what's on that list. But B, do you believe we are actually a step closer to getting the bad guys?
See, what we had, the debate has been going on. In 2009, this issue came up, and in 2011, the Supreme Court ordered that this investigation should carry out, and they wanted to carry out the investigation. And the court was concerned that despite spending 3 years, this investigation have not moved forward. And the government stand of the earlier government and the present government has been that we cannot share this information in public domain because it violates the treaty under which this information has been shared by the French government. Now that's the issue which was there with the issue. Now the Supreme Court insisted, yes, you provide the information. But I believe the Supreme Court at the same time also realized, yes, the government may be right when it says, yes, this information cannot be put in public domain. And that's why when this information was submitted today before the Supreme Court, they did not open the sealed envelope. Because there were 3 envelopes. One was the exchange,
that's right, the status report,
which contain name. Second was the correspondence between the government of India and the French government. That's an important thing. And third, what is the status report what the government has done. And that's why they said, let us give it to the SIT, let the chairman and vice chairman open this up and take up the issue. And then government also, if you know that the government also made a presentation today before the court that we are still bound by the treaty and confidentiality. And then the court made a remarks, look, chairman and vice chairman both are the retired Supreme Court judges and they understand and they know the law. And that's why they believe they will carry out the investigation. And the government has a right to make a representation there also that this information should not be made public information. Now what will happen with this is, now the all investigation will get expedited. Now the Income Tax Department, which has been carrying on the investigation for the last 2-3 years, will also be under pressure to
I think that's the point that Mahesh Jethmalani was making as well. The point is that there is now a time frame, that there is at least a sense that we're heading somewhere with this. So let me just ask Dr. Ajay Kumar of the Congress party that obviously, Dr. Kumar, we've seen the Congress and the opposition really go after the government on this issue for the last couple of days, perhaps rightly so, because of all the political rhetoric that we saw on the black money issue in the election. But as Mr. Jethmalani also pointed out, the fact is that This SIT was announced by the Supreme Court in 2011. The UPA government didn't act on it. In fact, it opposed it. The Modi government is at least seen to be acting, to be moving on the issue. Now, it may make, fumbles on the way, but on day one, they constituted it. Now you have a deadline. They've been forced into a deadline. There seems to be forward movement on this issue now, even though the onus was on your government to move forward back then. Ajay Kumar.
Nidhi, one is that there's a lot of miscommunication in the media. First of all, just a couple of facts. One was that the UPA government modified over 81 tax treaties so that we could get the information. They signed 14 new tax treaties. The Directorate of Foreign Tax reviewed over 33,000 crores of tax related transactions. The transfer pricing, which was where there was a lot of opportunity for tax evasion, goes up to the figure of 30,000 crores. The Government of India set up a high-level committee which had the Enforcement Directorate, the CBDT, the CBEC, and
but
the CBI.
You didn't constitute the SIT that the Supreme Court asked you to. You didn't constitute that SIT. The fact is, this government did that, right?
No, and I want to again, highlight a very important point, Nidhi. The government went with the contention that we have created a high-level committee of the total investigative power of the Government of India, which is Enforcement Directorate, CBDT, CBC, CBI. And there was at that time, so the miscommunication is the Supreme Court did not make a comment on the SIT formation. We said that the whole government investigative setup cannot be bigger than this. So now there is a miscommunication, etc., saying that the SIT was not set up. You tell me today the SIT says we need an Enforcement Directorate. So a high-level investigative committee which has CBDT, CBEC, CBI and Enforcement Directorate, there's nobody bigger than this who can get you the information.
So what you make is an important point. I just want to take that to Pinky Anand, that in fact what we also learned today, Pinky Anand, is that while today's government did set up this SIT, the same SIT hasn't, it has asked for the ED to be attached to it for investigations, which they said, hasn't happened until now. So there is a sense that while this government was trying to show that it's moving forward on this issue, there is also a lack of political will here to really seriously move forward with it, which is why you've seen the kind of absurd somersaults taking place in court over the last few days.
No, I don't understand what is the rare somersault that you're talking about. We are talking about an action which has been started and initiated and pushed by the government to bring back black money. Now for that purpose, A, investigation was going on, B, you have had the SIT itself which was formed, C, you've had the investigation being shared with the SIT, D, you've had the names being given to the SIT. What has happened in the last couple of days is the Supreme Court has asked for the names, which names have been also given over, so that there is no issue whatsoever on any kind of keeping back from either the public domain or otherwise. We are bound by the treaty, an international treaty binds us. The government cannot go against the treaty. So ultimately, however, when the Supreme Court directs, we have given it, the same has been kept in sealed cover, which reinforces the whole issue of confidentiality and not leaking it out to the people at large. You are having the SIT now functioning within a certain domain, and I think that's what the whole action is about.
Yes, but the point is that your hand was forced on it. At the end of the day, there was a selective leak of some names that were given to the court, of which, frankly, they were those names were a damp squib. You had somebody who had already paid a penalty for his tax violations. So at the end of the day, what the Supreme Court said yesterday, for instance, in court to the government wasn't exactly a compliment. It accused the government of trying to shield those with illegal accounts, put in a protective umbrella around them. So, in a sense, you got arm twisted into this.
Let's get our facts a little straight. The very clear understanding is that the treaty binds you not to disclose the names of people unless and until prosecution has been launched against them and there is a prima facie case which is made out. You can't be indicating names of people in the public domain when tomorrow they may even be found not to be guilty of any offence or guilty of any criminal activity or any black money, supposing the accounts are legitimate. So therefore, the entire process cannot be a knee-jerk one to say there are names of the government should release all of them. Even today the names have not been released. They've been given in a sealed cover, and the court has made it very clear in fact that they will remain in a sealed cover and will only go to the SIT. So
except
therefore,
that I wonder,
don't think there is any digression,
because you sound exactly like
thought.
the Congress did. I mean, we've repeated this point for 3 days, that this is the argument that the UPA government made, and BJP BJP was all hammer and tongs at that time, breathing fire and saying, no, release the names. I just want to get Sanjay Hegde, who joins us again this evening, a senior advocate of the Supreme Court. The question that I asked just before you came was, where do we go from here? Mahesh Jethmalani says, look, you have a deadline now, you have dates, you have a timeline, you have a Supreme Court that says, look, we are monitoring this probe now very seriously. Would you say that that is the big takeaway today, or that there are still many question marks on how this is going to go?
Well, there are bound to be question marks, but this is a beginning. You have, even if it's a trophy prosecution as it were, that there are about 600 or 700 names. Those names have to be processed. The SIT is asked for teeth in the form of the Enforcement Directorate and the others to assist it. The processing which would otherwise have been left to the Enforcement Directorate and the tax authorities will be monitored by the SIT, which is headed by a former judge of the Supreme Court. So in a sense, what the court has ensured is that it has its own body monitoring the work that the ED and the tax authorities were supposed to have done. So there can be no selectivity. But of course, these accounts actually reflect a fraction of the problem. This is a beginning, but this is not the end of it.
And you say a fraction of the problem because you're saying these are not the big fish.
We do not know how much money is still left in these accounts today at the end of 2014. You must remember that this data
goes to 2006.
It goes to 2006. Yeah. In 8 years, I really suspect that there's not much left in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I had black money parked there once upon a time, I would have moved it out to some island by now. Yeah.
But the account statements, if you go through the accounts as to how much money came in at what point of time, if that can be correlated with other evidence, probably you could make out a case in some of those accounts.
So let me ask Aarti that, this is a very complex issue clearly, but do you think it's been trapped in this political rhetoric that we've seen over the last few years, where black money became this big election issue, where nobody really understood the nuances of what it's going to take to really get the money back, as it were? Well, and now people are trapped in that rhetoric.
Completely. I think the BJP is caught in a trap of its own making, but I'm surprised that the BJP did not understand this. I mean, I'm surprised they did not understand the nuances. It's not that the BJP has never been in government. After all, the BJP was in government, and the issue was raised first by a person no less than L.K. Advani, who was Home Minister in the Vajpayee government. So surely he understood, and Arun Jaitley, who is now the Finance Minister, was also a Law Minister in the Vajpayee government. I mean, they must have understood the nuances of all these things. So, I mean, I could not understand why they decided to drum it up into such a big election issue.
You think that was a mistake?
Well, I mean, the point is that, look, clearly we have a big problem of black money. And, as I think I said on your show last time, that, our politics is funded by black money. Our elections are funded by black money. So it's a problem that needs to be tackled. But whether this is the way of doing it, whether this is the, whether to make a big issue of these few hundred accounts that are lying abroad, which may be cleaned out by now because these relate to 2006. I mean, we've already had the 3 names that were revealed 2-3 days ago to the Supreme Court. I think 2 of those people have denied holding accounts.
No, so you can already see, my colleague Sudhi was reporting, many of these people say they have legitimate accounts, or they've denied that they have accounts, in which case what do you do? So Sanjay Hegde had a point, and I'll come back to Mr. Jethmalani then. Yes.
You asked about the politics of black money and black money in foreign accounts. There was an invisible dog whistle out there, because after all there was a question of foreign origins. So there was a foreign origins question which tied in with corruption and foreign money. It all made for a different picture, and the message which was sent out was that everything that is offshore will be brought here and that all of us will benefit. Now that rhetoric, unfortunately, is a case of advertising without an actual product being there.
I'll take that back to Pinky Anand. Pinky Anand, when you look back, this is something I've actually asked BJP spokespersons repeatedly over the past couple of days. Did you all raise the pitch too high politically?
I'm afraid, Nidhi, I am answering for the government. I am not answering for the BJP.
But you have been a party spokesperson during the elections, Pinky Anand. I mean, you've been on this program many
I know
times
he's a
talking
lawyer
about
today.
the black money issue. I understand the position
He's a
you're
lawyer
in
for the
today.
government.
But do you believe the pitch was raised too high? You're a lawyer as well. You're a good person.
I think, Nidhi, I have made my statement to you.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'll take that to Mahesh Jethmalani then. You know, Mahesh Jethmalani, one, the political question. Do you believe that the poll pitch was raised too high on this issue? That's part one of my question. I'll come to part two after you answer it.
Hello? Yes?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Jethmalani. Do you believe that it was a mistake
Sorry,
for
what
the
was the
BJP?
question,
My question
Nidhi?
is, do you believe it was a mistake for the BJP to raise the pitch so high politically on this issue? Because today we're finding things are very different, you know, when reality sinks in.
Well, first of all, Nidhi, I don't know what you mean by raise the pitch too high. It was an election issue. It wasn't the most important election issue. There were many other issues which Mr. Modi, who spearheaded the campaign, enunciated. I mean, this argument is completely erroneous and tries to malign an election, manifesto and an election rhetoric unnecessarily. It was an issue that the Congress had been dragging its feet. That's why the government took the investigation out of the Congress government's hands and put it into the SIT. Yes, there were tall promises made, but now you can see, even if someone like me who believes that the application of the present government before the Supreme Court was misconceived, at least the best thing that's happened is the end result. And the end result is, as I said, the timeline. You have a deadline now of 31st March for the entire thing to get over. That's excellent. And if we can finish investigating all this by 31st March, the purpose will be achieved. And if it was not done by the BJP, it was done by the BJP, through the BJP, at the behest of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
But, Nidhi,
Yeah,
one
Aarti,
second.
yeah.
I think the key word here is if it's completed by March. I mean, this.
It's an initial deadline.
It's just
It's
an
gonna go
initial
on.
deadline, and it has been, you know, many times in the past we've seen these deadlines being extended again and again. And look at the Jain Hawala case, which was also monitored by the Supreme Court. What was the end result of that?
Mr. Jain wants to come in.
You see, I will take 2-3 issues which have a reason. The one issue is that the deadline which we are looking to complete the issue, and second was the issue whether these accounts are legitimate account or illegitimate account. And third issue which arises is there is something different in the black money which is stashed abroad or the black money which is in India, and why are we concerned about the black money which is outside India?
No, I agree. That was going to be the next question.
I see, and any money on which tax is not paid is a black money.
Yeah.
And any money which is illegitimately acquired, maybe because of the corruption, which is a disproportionate assets by the bureaucrat or by the politician, is also black money. That's the issue. Now the issue which is for consideration is that we are all putting a deadline of 31st March 2015. How that investigation is going to get completed? Now this information is a stolen data which just gives the name of the account holder and the account number and some balance at one particular time. This doesn't give much more than that. This is not an evidence, valid evidence in the life law. Now, for that purpose, the authorities in India need to go back to the bank and to obtain a bank statement.
Mr. Jethmalani, he's raising his hand, I think, on this particular point. Let him intervene and I'll come back to you, sir. Yes.
Nidhi, all I want to say is that this whole thing about a complicated investigation is a complete red herring. For the simple reason that all you have to see is these are Indian account holders, separate the non-resident from the resident. The resident ones, if they have an account, have to show that they are within the guidelines laid down by the Reserve Bank, or they have some kind of Reserve Bank permission to hold those accounts. The others who don't are clearly amenable to prosecution. If there are simple cases of income tax evasion, there will be no criminal prosecution. But if, for instance, there are politicians, you know that disproportionate assets by a politician is an offence under the Prevention of Corruption Act. The first thing I would say is, if there are any politicians on those lists, they should all be disclosed. Because A, the public has a right to know about its rulers, ex or present, and also because the law mandates that in the case of politicians, disproportionate assets, the onus is on the politician to prove that those assets are not disproportionate.
Mr. Jain disagrees with you. One second, let me get Mr. Jain.
Let me clarify the issue.
No,
let me clarify the issue. I am only on the evidence. The issue as on date is there is a stolen data which say the name and account number. If you go to the concerned person, he is bound to deny that this is not my account. Please produce the evidence. And for producing that evidence, you need to go back to that banker or to that authority, government, Swiss authority, please help me in getting that data. That's why the government of India has been insisting that please do not put this data in public domain. If we do it, we will lose the right to go to the authority and to the bank to give me the data, because then they will suspect Indian authority.
No, so
much
what
more.
you're saying is we're not going to know. Bottom line, we're not going to know who
No,
the bad guys are.
it is not there.
Mr.
The
Jain
issue
is
is, that's why the idea was, that's why I said in the beginning, idea is that let the tax authorities expedite this, because the tax authority need to establish a case which they can do it. Yes, this is a concealed income and this is the income which you have tax evasion and tax fraud, and that's why you need to be prosecuted.
But you know, there was another interesting point which you raised, and let me ask everybody this. I'll ask Sanjay Hegde this first. Now, according to now, there are various statistics that float around on black money. Nobody really knows what the actual estimate is. But many studies say that most of it is in India. All right. Why are we obsessed with this money abroad? I mean, you try and go and buy a house in Delhi. Please, I will applaud the person who takes all the money in white. You know, so why are we not getting politically outraged about the black money within India and the way our political parties are funded, for example?
Well, that's part of our Indian hypocritical thinking, because we don't want to see the dirt within our houses. We always believe that there are outside forces, that everything that is bad comes through foreign hands, foreign origins. Actually, you were right. There are studies which say that 90% of all black money is in India, doesn't move offshore. Of the 10% which moves offshore, more than half of it comes back through round tripping. Of that 5% which remains, not everything ends up in a bank. Some of it is spent on a good time in Vegas or wherever else. Some of it is spent in getting a mansion here or there. Very little actually remains in the bank, and bankers out there are so bound in their secrecy that money can move from tax haven to tax haven at the click of a mouse, and investigators will forever be investigating. So if you want to tackle the problem of black money, period, you have to clean India as part of Swachh India.
So then, Aarti, what happened? Why did this become so big? Why? Because it was a better headline? What was it?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I can't understand, that how do experienced politicians, political leaders of the BJP who have been in government before, how did they make this into such a big political issue? And now they're just caught in their own rhetoric.
No, but
and how are they going to get out of this? Because the pressure is on them, the media is highlighting it,
one thing here,
and people are going to raise
second.
questions.
Pinky, I'll take that to you as well, and then to Ajay Kumar as well. That, you know, why aren't we talking about the black money at home? I mean, we've done so many shows. This show has done, for instance, on political parties being reluctant to reveal where they get all their donations from. I mean, these are basic things. You're not cleaning up the real estate sector in this country. Nobody's serious about that. But foreign bank accounts are suddenly the big target.
Nidhi, it is not as if suddenly the foreign accounts.
Sorry, Pinky.
It is not as if foreign or black money abroad. The black money abroad is a subject matter of sudden attention, or has been in the last little time. In fact, black money and foreign money abroad has been the subject matter of a lot of concern since the issue was brought up even by Mr. Advani, as you rightly said, and by Mr. Jethmalani, for example, when he filed the petition, the matter came up to the court. These issues have been gaining significance, and the public has been seeing that money which is stashed away, which includes unplanned or untaxed money, money which is corrupt money, money which is used for other kind of anti-national activities, that is being stashed abroad. You have the information coming to you, and you have a source.
How many people pay tax in this country? What is it, 3-4%?
3% of people pay taxes in India. Of that 3%, 2/3 of them just pay marginal tax or file tax returns only for the purpose of getting refunds. The 1/3 that actually pays out of that 3%, that's 1% of the population of India, has a huge tax burden imposed on it.
Absolutely, because there's some absurdly low number of people who claim that they make 1 crore and above. I'll take that to Ajay Kumar as well, that the Congress as the principal opposition, and you've been in government, you've not taken the issue of black money seriously at any level. I mean, forget the foreign bank accounts, what about the black money within India? I asked the same question to the BJP. Why is this a political issue?
Okay, now I'll answer it in two parts. First is what Mahesh and others have been saying. I think the BJP went consciously, very much like Aarti said. I don't think they were unaware. I think they went consciously to mislead the people in terms of this communication exercise. So it was a good political strategy which was telling a whole bunch of untruths and promising to the country, saying that we'll get 15 lakhs into everybody's account, etc., etc. They knew what they were doing. So it was a huge amount of event management. So I think the fundamental fact is that so much of untruth was told during the political campaign, and that the BJP government saying that we were unaware of or we made a mistake is ridiculous. They had a plan, they knew the data, but they just wanted to mislead the country. Now, coming to the second part, there is a huge requirement to change the laws, right from ability to seize the property, and I agree with you that the challenge is political funding. We can't walk away from that. There is a requirement for all political parties to understand that political funding in elections, real estate, circle prices versus, black versus white, money trail, and it's high time all the political parties pay attention. But what is interesting, I just want to give a small perspective. The Election Commission made a modification saying that the parties can spend any amount of time on their budget during election. The individuals have limit, the parties don't have limit. That has again opened a Pandora's box. So the huge amount of funding goes in at the national level or state level, and earlier it used to be credited to the candidate, now it doesn't. So I think we have gone backwards also. The amount of money being spent in elections, the amount of access to political power through black money is huge. So I think first step is for the Election Commission to limit the spending levels or accounting purposes
those are the issues. The point is, Mahesh Jethmalani, those are the issues we need to be talking about. We seem to be all up in arms, everyone is so angry, and all of us, me included, waving our arms about black money in foreign banks, whereas no one's willing to take a serious look at what's going on at home. Like we were just saying, 3% of people pay tax in this country. It's ridiculous.
File tax returns. Yeah,
file tax returns. Sorry, they may not necessarily pay the tax.
But that argument, Nidhi, which you've just made, is an argument which the holders of black money abroad would love. First of all, it's a very simple solution. We are all agreed upon one thing, that the source of all black money within this country, and most of it goes out and is not in this country, by the way, is political. It's funding of elections and it's bureaucratic and political corruption. That's where it all starts. So we are all for state funding of elections. Let all the parties put their heads together and have a clear program that we have a consensus on this aspect, that in future all elections will be funded by the state. That will be one very strong determinant of eliminating black money from the system. Now let me tell you, there's a fallacy that most of the black money which is circulating exists in this country. Most of the black money is generated in this country, but retained, what is retained in this country is a very small amount. The bulk of it is sent abroad, and it is for this reason.
But you are saying the complete opposite of what...
If you look at one channel that's already
published... The complete opposite of what many others are saying.
1 minute, Nidhi, let me finish. Nidhi, since you have put a little slant on foreign versus black money, let me just try and correct that impression. And why it's so important that what you have enunciated is completely fallacious. Let me tell you that if you look at the account holders, if you look at the money in their accounts in 2006 and 2007, there were 8,000 crores and 10,000 crores and 14,000 crores in those accounts. You can't keep money like that.
How do you know that?
How does he know?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. How do you know that? Nobody has accurate data, frankly.
How do you know?
How do you know that there was 10,000 crores in those accounts?
Because one channel has already published it, and this is now legion, and you will come to know about it.
No, but you can quote that to me. I'm only quoting to you what I read. I mean, this is what think tanks are saying. 90% of black money remains in India. I mean, Sanjay.
Nobody has denied it. Nobody has denied it.
I am saying. I think they all. What was Baba Ramdev's figure? 1 second. What was Baba Ramdev's figure on black money? Wasn't it some other?
It was so large that I couldn't. I don't remember.
I mean, so everybody has their own figure on this.
I
don't deny.
There is no
I don't misunderstand. No,
Ramdev's figure was 7 trillion.
Yeah.
Global financial integrity was 462 billion, and the CBI figure was 500 billion. See, the most credible figure seems to be global financial integrity, GFI Washington, which sort of estimated about 462 billion.
Yeah.
At a previous point of time. The CBI director then, Mr. Singh, extrapolated the figure and thought it was about 500 billion. There's this tax team, this tax haven team, which was analyzing it under Professor Arun Kumar. They seem to come to a figure of opportunity cost, not the actual money. That is about 1.1 trillion. But the black money which is abroad is just less than 10% of all these figures.
You know, Nidhi, I think Mr. Jethmalani, you only need to look at the real estate sector in India and, you know, election campaigns. And I think you'll realize that there's far more black money floating around in this country than there is abroad.
And you know, it's not my argument that this is black money abroad is not an issue. It is an issue. I think the question is why we don't give the black money within the country the same attention.
If you look at the stock market, you will find that the money, you will find a correlation that every time there are elections, the rupee appreciates. Every time there is an election, the money is brought from abroad for elections.
Okay, let me just get Mr. Prashant Bhushan, who joins us this evening as well for the last part of this program, because Mr. Bhushan, you've been a key player in all of this. After today's developments, we've heard very different views on this panel tonight about where they see this investigation going. Mr. Jethmalani is optimistic that there's a deadline now and we'll see forward movement. Others on the panel, however, are not so convinced and believe it's very, very complex and complicated. What do you think?
Well, if the government has not done any credible investigation for more than 3 years, since which it has had these names, and at the end of more than 3 years they come out with only 3 names against whom they claim that they have established that these are illegal accounts, then it clearly means that if these matters are left to merely the governments, successive governments, then no credible investigation will be done, no names will come out, and therefore we have to now depend largely on this SIT and the Supreme Court to ensure that credible investigations are done and that this information comes out.
So,
but as I said earlier, if we are serious about stopping the generation, the hoarding and the laundering of this black money or illicit money, we first need to close down the avenues of holding black money or illicit money in India itself. You have legalized participatory notes, which allows anonymous money to be parked and invested in India. You have allowed investments from companies based in tax havens without finding out who the owners and shareholders of those companies are. You have to stop these kind of flows. And secondly, you need to make a law which obliges every Indian citizen to disclose his assets held abroad. And any assets not disclosed will be deemed to be laundered money and liable for confiscation. And then you seriously use the UN Convention Against Corruption to ask all these countries, tax haven countries particularly, to disclose the names of those Indian citizens who have not disclosed their accounts here to the Reserve Bank. Then you will be able to track down some of this money and stop the flow
what you're saying,
of this
Mr.
money
Bhushan,
into India.
What you're saying is that until there is an overhaul in our laws, you're not going to see much progress even with an SIT, Supreme Court monitored probe. That's the bottom line.
We hope that the SIT is going to recommend these changes, that is stopping these anonymous investment instruments, which is legalizing the hoarding and the investment of illicit money in India itself. We hope that the SIT will also recommend, and then the Supreme Court will force the government to bring these kind of changes in our system, apart from tracking down these few names. So far all the names that have come out have been given out by whistleblowers. The Liechtenstein account, the HSBC account, as well as the ICIJ account. These are all information leaked by whistleblowers, not given by any official government officially.
Although Mr. Jain is with
The
us
government
here,
of India has not got a
there is a
single
law
name
that
officially.
exists on this already. You're saying that if people don't disclose their assets abroad, they can be...
See, Income Tax Act was amended 2 years back. Now every person who is having any financial assets outside India is duty bound to disclose it in the return of income. And there is a requirement of the law that in case you are holding any financial assets outside India, even to file a return of income, even when you don't have any income. And financial assets include when you have it, when you are an authorized signatory for somebody else also. It need not be your money. So that's a wider amendment which has been made 2 years back. And now every person who is having any financial assets outside India is duty bound to
but
file.
then clearly something is not working.
It is working. See, this system has been...
This is a new measure.
Yeah.
This is 2012.
So we don't know. That's true actually, because
this
these
is-
are figures of 2006.
There are two parts of the problem.
Yeah.
One is, how do you go after those who evaded the tax in the past? Those are past transactions. The second part of the problem is, how do you put in place measures which ensure that there is no recurrence of the problem or which minimizes the problem? This is one of the...
And how do you do that, Mr. Bhushan, without entering into a complicated relationship then with countries, and you already have these double taxation avoidance agreements with some 80 countries. You're planning to sign an agreement with the United States soon. Now these are arguments repeatedly that both governments gave before the court. The court didn't accept them. But then, these are treaties, these are international treaties. There's been some criticism that the court has also encroached upon what, is the government's sovereign turf. So how do you balance this out?
See, you don't need double taxation treaties anymore after the UN Convention Against Corruption, which has been signed and ratified by India and all these countries, including Switzerland and most of these countries which are today called tax havens, including Mauritius, etc. You can use that UN Convention Against Corruption, which is an international treaty. It's not a bilateral treaty, it's an international treaty under which every government is obliged to provide us information about assets held by our citizens which we believe are illegally held. To show that they are illegally held or to prove that they are illegally held, you need to have a law which says that any assets held abroad which are not disclosed to the Indian authorities will be deemed to be proceeds of
But Mr.
crime
Hegde disagrees
and
with
therefore
you.
liable for confiscation.
He's saying you do need these agreements.
You do need these
How you
agreements
will
because
survive?
there are millions of people of Indian origin in the United States, for instance, who are subject to taxation for their assets in India. The United States
No,
has
that's
already...
a double taxation issue.
No.
Let me clarify.
We are not talking about double taxation issues.
Two
Way
countries,
too much.
two countries can't.
You're just confusing
We are
the issue
talking
completely.
about
all of you.
Let me clarify two issues.
Quickly, yes.
Indians also enter, Indian entities, Indian businessmen enters into so many transactions with the foreign entities which otherwise will get taxed in case we do not have the double taxation avoidance agreement. It doesn't mean that to get hold of the 5 or 10% illegitimate account, we do have a taxation and we have an impact on the 95%
That you do away with it
economy.
altogether.
One.
Okay.
Secondly, post 2009, after this 2008 Lehman Brothers issue, G20 countries have been pressing for the amendment in these treaties, whereby they say that this information about the bank account will be automatically shared between one country with another country. That's why the US has now enacted the law which is called the FATCA, Foreign Account Taxation Compliance Act, whereby every financial institution of the other country is supposed to share the information about the US citizens and US green card holder with that USA,
Okay, that's
so that USA
interesting.
can get the information.
Let me give Aarti the last word on this.
Nidhi, I mean, look.
Are we going to
I'm
sit here
just a lay-
and
Listen.
1st April next year discussing the
The
names?
same thing again. No, absolutely.
I don't think so.
And Nidhi, listen, I'm a lay person. I'm not
Yeah.
a chartered accountant. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm not a political person. I'm just the arm army of this country, right? I mean, even though I'm a journalist. So, as far as I'm concerned, what do I see in front of me? What is the picture in front of me? The picture in front of me is that the party which is currently ruling had made an election promise on black money, that they would investigate all the foreign accounts, get the black money back into India within 100 days, 150 days. I want to know today what has happened. The government has been around for 4 months, 5 months. I don't see any signs of us moving any closer
I
to
think
that
that's what we
promise.
were talking
We're
about,
just
getting trapped in your own
confused and-
rhetoric.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're getting confused
You know,
with all
these are
legal
important
arguments,
issues,
which
these
is
are
just
serious
muddying the
issues
waters.
which shouldn't have got trapped in the kind of rhetoric that they did. Mahesh Jethmalani, I'm completely out of time. I call you back in April next year. Let us see what happens when the SIT submits its report and whether it actually leads us anywhere. I'm not hedging my bets on this one.